I am very happy to have two wonderful authors here to talk about comedy. We all love to laugh. Laughter is, what is it? Laughter is the best medicine. And Lee and Dave definitely spare nothing with the laughter, and I'm looking forward to almost listening to them feed off of one another. But Lee and Dave, come on and join us up here. So to introduce you two real quick, and then we're going to jump right into it. Lee Gaitan is an award-winning author of 4 books, including the Amazon #1 bestseller, My Pineapples Went to Houston, which is a wonderful title. First edition in her 2018 release, Light Wines and Laughter, which garnered 3 international book awards and for which she was named a first place winner for Georgia Independent Author of the Year. She has also authored chapters in the best-selling books, The Divinity of Dogs, Feisty After 45, and Angel Bumps, as well as the award-winning These Summer Months and the recently released anthology Goodness. And Lee is joined by somebody she has never met before in her life, Dave Jaffe, who is a national award-winning book, who has a national award-winning book, Sleeping Between Giants, Life, if you could call it that, with a terrier. Life, as you call it that, with a terrier. Sorry, there's commas. I lost myself there. I don't know what went on there.
I forget it all the time, so I wouldn't feel bad about it.
You have too many commas, Dave. Which won the 2021 International Book Award for Humor in the Indies Today 2019 Best Humor Book Award. And anything that can come out of 2020 or 2021 with the word award on it is something that I am very much eager to be a part of. So welcome to you both, and I'm glad to have you here. And let's just kind of jump into this, right?
Thank you, Zach.
Because we're here to talk about humor. We've specifically stated it as humor in a pandemic, but the truth of it is that we want to discuss how to write humor when life is not being the most pleasant to us. Because it's easy to be funny when everything's good and flowing and there are no concerns, but when life has been what it has the last 2 years, when you're dealing with a pandemic and you're dealing with politics and you're dealing with racial strife and you're dealing with economic troubles, not to mention wildfires and hurricanes and floods and everything that's happened in the last 2 years.
What's not to laugh about?
Writes itself.
Well, then you answer the question. I was just going to say, I mean, how do you find something funny to write about?
Well, first of all, I didn't know Jaffe was going to be here because we've had kind of a falling out.
Yeah.
So
right after we met each other.
Yeah, exactly. Someone I've never met. No, Zach, it was someone I'd wished I'd never met. No. Yeah, Dave and I, thank goodness that I did have somebody like that. I'm speaking for myself. I hope he feels the same way, but thank goodness we did have each other because, man, I mean, as you said, I mean, we all have personal, it rains on everyone's parade. So you always have things come into your personal life. And if you're supposed to be a humor writer, that can be a challenge. And that's what My Pineapples Went to Houston. That book is all about using humor to bounce back from incredibly bad bounces, all those curves that life throws you. And I always say I'm sitting on my biggest curves right now, but you add in the last 2 years, wow, it's really been difficult. So one of the things, Dave and I talked about that a lot. One of the things that has helped and would help anyone is being plugged into a group. If you're a humor writer, whatever kind of writer you are, the last couple of years have made it really, really challenging. Now, I have heard some people say that writing became their refuge. It was their go-to. I did not react that way. I've told Dave, my writing became more refuse than refuge. Really hard to find the funny. But Dave and I have helped a lot. What do we talk? How do we find the funny, Dave? Tell the truth.
It's been, there's no question it's been difficult to be productive over the past pandemic years. I mean, I spent my time for 2 years hiding in the basement behind the furnace under a tarp talking to a bag of potato chips. So, but to me, it wasn't so much a question of, it's not that I can't find topics to talk about, but that my motivation degraded during a pandemic time. It was just a lot harder to get myself up at the computer writing. And I talked to a lot of writers, and we all seem to come to the same place, which is, and I urge all of you who are writing, considering writing, no writers, don't beat yourself up for not producing. I mean, because your brain, at least my brain, was remaining productive. And
That's
if it's bent,
questionable.
yeah, well, that's true. It's a good point, Lee. But if it's bent towards humor in particular, it can't be shut off. It's writing, even when I'm not. I mean, early in the pandemic, when we were completely shut in, I'm reading all the news on the pandemic, and I hear that dogs are being trained in Sweden to sniff out COVID. I ruminated on that one for weeks. It just bounced around in my head, but it eventually led to a piece where I have the dogs in the dog park. And in my book and the follow-up, dogs gather in the dog park and they discuss the issues of the day. So naturally, what came out of this was a piece about dogs in the dog park who have invited one of these COVID sniffing dogs as a guest speaker. And his entire address to the gathered dogs, after quite a bit of lead up to this, he takes the what is ostensibly the microphone and says, well, researchers have me sniff things and sometimes I get a cookie. I'll take your questions now. That was all he had to say. And the rest of it was now the discussion among the dogs trying to figure out what COVID is and what's the best way to deal with it. So what I'm saying is, yes, I'm coming from a humor perspective. If you haven't been productive, your writing's not over.
No.
It's a downtime to do the physical act. Keep your notes. I do that. I take extensive notes all throughout the day, so I can always go back to something and say, gee, that was a nice idea. Maybe I can do something with that. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing now regularly again. I hope to get up to, even more regularly.
Maybe like a page.
Like a whole page.
3
for
paragraphs.
Next year. Yeah.
No, I will just piggyback because, I like to piggyback. That's what we have said over and over to each other. And then, like you said, Dave, to all the other writers that we know, for heaven's sakes, don't put even more pressure on yourself that I'm not writing, I'm not producing, I'm not writing. So many things. We're so preoccupied, even if you're not. My husband had COVID, thank God. He was before the vaccines, and I lost a cousin to it too. So there were very, very serious things that, touched very personally. We're all worried about our jobs, economy, and all of that. If you were not actively writing, it's okay. I feel like if we made it through, and you even have some pants that fit, granted they're elastic waist, I feel like it's a win. But I really, really seriously agree with what Dave is saying. If you are a writer of any stripe, you're an observer. You're an observer of life, and you are constantly in that. I always think of it like the programs that are running in the background on your phone. Even if you're not actively using that, they are always running, and you are perceiving things, and you're taking mental note of things, and you're seeing the dissimilarities in things. You're seeing a strange juxtaposition here. You're seeing the paradoxical things where humor happens for us. And it's going on. And one of these days, you may be in the shower, you may be making coffee, whatever you're doing. And all of a sudden you'll go, oh, I know what I can do. I know what I can write about. And something that Dave talks about, and that the two of us talk about a lot, is the percolation. Yeah. So a lot of times it's not your very first idea. Sometimes you're really inspired. This almost never happens to me, but every now and then I'll get inspiration like manna from heaven, or, and the inspiration, yes, is true. And the idea, the kernel is there, but your first pass through is not great. And so don't hit send on that first pass through. Maybe, rare, every now and then it's like, it can't get better than this. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, if you let it roll around, like you said about the COVID sniffing dogs, Dave, you had the thought and you're kind of playing with it. What could I do with it? Where could I go with it? And then after a couple of days, or, in Dave's case, weeks to months to years, and after mining my brain, taking my ideas
And yet you keep coming back for more, Lee. You keep coming back for more.
It's the
You know, you
masochist
do bring
in
up
me.
you brought up an interesting point about
Oh, thank you.
people writing, and during this difficult time, it's
Hmm.
so much harder to get motivated.
Yeah.
But for some people, they were able to draw something out
Yeah.
of this. My 95-year-old mother, who Lee, you know, and we've talked about her,
She
but
is
you
awesome.
haven't heard this one yet.
Oh no.
She's 95, thank God, sharp as a tack, and she is writing little vignettes about her experience as a 95-year-old woman
Wonderful.
trapped in the house, essentially, as we all are, but even more so as a 95-year-old, where so many people you know, so many people you have loved are all gone. And she's been writing little pieces. I'm talking a paragraph or two. And it's not a lot. It's every few days. But I read this stuff over because she sent it to me because, of course, she didn't know how to turn it into a document. So I spent about an hour and a half on the phone explaining how to email it to me. And then I put it into a single, yes, I put it into a single page for her. But of course, I read it. And it was quite impressive to me that someone is able to synthesize these difficult times and use it as a springboard into writing some pieces themselves. So, you know, it works on many levels.
And you and I kind of used it differently. I mean, after you came out from behind the furnace because the HVAC guy said this was not a good idea. My writing, I have a very narrow range of skills. And so I'm a humor writer. I also write, you know, serious things, but or serious things that are accidentally funny or vice versa. But I still I draw things from my life or those around me. I always say, mine your life. I mine my life. And so COVID to me had, you know, two faces of COVID. If you want to try to write, or if you want to try to write funny, it was the things that I was doing because I was so preoccupied, you know, like I actually believed that it was Father's Day when it wasn't Father's Day. I know when Father's Day is. And I went to Target and I forgot a mask and I had to go home and get the mask. And then I had a debit card in my pocket of my yoga pants because I didn't want to take my purse in and have all of that surface area exposed to COVID germs. I couldn't get the card out. I ripped the pocket out of my pants. I bent over, the mask blind hit me in the eye, it was a disaster. It came out to be one of the funniest pieces, and something that I got a really great response to because everybody could relate to that. And then the times I've told Dave, I turned the shower on myself twice when I was fully dressed, not once, but twice. I've lived in this house for 15 years. I have cleaned that shower every week. I have never turned the water on myself while I was cleaning the shower. And like, I just lost my mind. So you know, when I really got desperate, I turned those things into pieces. Or the other thing that COVID really brought to the fore for me is tragedy all around, of course, and there's nothing funny about that. But at the same time, there was nothing we needed more than a little relief from that relentless tragedy. And as you said at the beginning, Zach, on every front, I mean, just exacerbated by COVID, of course, and magnified by COVID, but all of the attendant things, economic stuff, you know, racial strife going on, all kinds of stuff going on. And we need to take a break from that. So sometimes you don't use what's going on as your material. Dave is fabulous at that. He's fabulous as a good Chicago newspaper man. He's really good at taking, you know, popular news topics and finding the funny in that, or somehow using it. I would write about something completely unrelated, not because I was denying what was going on, but because we all just needed that little break. And then you go back to, you know, the real life, but you had a couple of minutes to discharge that mental stress, to maybe get the biochemistry in your brain changed to a more favorable composition.
And you know, Lee, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
oh yes, yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. Everybody was tired of hearing you.
I know. I can't believe you don't have mute, do you?
We're the
Not
only
for
ones
me.
watching anymore at this
Okay.
point, Lee. And Zach got off of the line half an hour ago.
I kind of reached the point where I was like, I don't know why I got all these other questions. One was enough.
Here's the thing.
That's all you need for
I
us.
don't even like him. Okay.
But what you said about going through, my own writing being drawn from topical issues. I mean, I've
really
been a
good at that.
columnist. I was a columnist and commentator for many, many years. And so much of my work for not just Sleeping Between Giants, the book, but all my other endeavors. I was on NPR.
National Lampoon, Dave.
National Lampoon. They came from the first 3 or 4 pages of the daily newspaper. I mean, in Sleeping Between Giants website, I've done half a dozen pieces that came out of the pandemic. That COVID sniffing dog I talked about, how dogs Zoom was another one. How they understand it and how dogs use Zoom. Dogs arguing about wearing face masks. That's an interesting topic for dogs, especially with the snout. They have trouble with it anyway, but they never quite understand these topics the way we do. These allowed me to explore these rather difficult issues, but do it with sarcasm, do it with jokes, turn it into something where we have all in some way thought about this issue of face masks, or how do we Zoom? How do we learn these sorts of things? So I was drawing that just from the everyday of what I saw in the newspaper, what I kept up on.
And I'd like to point one thing out. Dogs throughout the pandemic, they came into this pandemic not wearing pants, haven't worn pants. They didn't understand what all the talk was about, not wearing pants. My veterinarian said something about pants. He said, Lee, I always wore pants, even before the pandemic. Did people not wear pants? I get up in the morning. It seems like a natural thing to do.
It's interesting because you actually you both said something that triggered a thought in my head, and Lee, you had said something about elastic pants, and I'm still trying to. Are there other pants? Because I feel like there's nothing left in my wardrobe other than elastic pants.
There's drawstring, Zach. I saw it. Drawstring.
Oh, drawstring.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. That was Yes,
but after 2 years of a pandemic, every American is wearing stretch pants. I mean, come on.
I know. It's like I look at my jeans. I actually I've done something I'd never in my life done. I hung them in the closet. They've been in a drawer before, and I'm like, well, I need the drawer. I don't need the jeans. So that's fine.
I don't need the jeans.
But anyway,
who am I kidding? Right?
I know. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. But okay, so anyway, for everybody who's here, Jessica Nettles is typing away in the chat. She's grabbing links to Lee and Dave's websites, any other information that comes up, elastic versus drawstring pants. There's a link there for that one. So she is on it as usual. And for the rest of you, if you're looking to ask a question, if you have anything in mind as we go along, please use the Q&A function, which is at the center bottom of your screen. Just click on that and you can put your question in there, and we will go through those questions during the show, not necessarily all at the end. You had said something, and I'm trying to remember now because it was, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, Dave, that was about sort of implied the pain and the difficulty and everything like that. And, I think of Richard Pryor, who was quoted as saying that all humor is rooted in pain, and Emma Bombeck, who said that, let's see, what is it? There's a thin line between laughter and pain, comedy and tragedy, humor and hurt. And I'm curious for you both, and Dave, we'll start with you, is your humor fed by pain?
I have to say that yes, coping with pain and sadness can be a spur for humor. I don't believe that pain is the only way to get to humor. We're funny animals, we humans, and we use humor in all sorts of ways. I mean, what is the first thing you do when you meet somebody new at a party or whatever? You guys try to crack a joke. There's somebody tries to say something funny, bad or good, successful or not. So coping with pain, though, and sadness can definitely spur humor. Interestingly enough, it's Like all truly inspiring stories, Sleeping Between Giants began with a dead dog,
As they do.
as so many stories do. Uh, Oxford was our first terrier, and he was the godfather of the neighborhood. His rule was paternal, but ruthless. And when he died, our family was devastated, especially Brisby, who was our Schnauzer Poodle mix, who was Oxford's mob enforcer. And without a crime boss, we were worried that Brisby would turn to booze and pills and definitely, cycle down into madness. So we got him another criminal. We got him Budley, the terrier. Now, Budley had been arrested on the streets of Waukegan, Illinois, for vandalism and panhandling, which was false, and for being a stray dog, which was true. And from our adoption of Budley and having Brisby and previous dogs, Sleeping Between Giants was created, which uses columns and cartoons and comic strips that I create to tell Budley's story and the story of other dogs too. So that's how I have related pain to humor. Lee, we've had a lot of talks about this. You've had some interesting thoughts on this one yourself, because you come at it from a different angle.
Yeah, Dave and I always talk about, he writes from the outside in and I write from the inside out, mainly because it's all I know how to do. So, but you know, the republication, the second edition of that Pineapples book, the subtitle is Finding the Humor in My, now I hope I remember it all, Dashed Hopes, Broken Dreams, and Plans Gone Outrageously Awry. And what that book turned out to be and what the original intent of it was are two totally different things. My first book, now I'm going to tell you how old I am. My very first book was published back in 1998. Yes, boys and girls, there was another century. And it was the one I liked. It was the one when phones were dumb, but I felt a lot smarter. But that was, before blogging and self-publishing and hybrid publishing and all that. And I had a traditional publishing deal with Longstreet Press, that was owned by Cox, that was here in Atlanta. And it was called Falling Flesh Just Ahead and Other Signs on the Road to Midlife, because that's when I thought the grand tragedy of my life was turning 40. Yeah, and it was very, it was a funny look at all the things that happen at midlife. And so the second book was to be a continuation of a lighthearted look at all the things that, had gone when all your plans go awry, like especially when I was on a book tour for that first book. I just got to tell you, for example, I was booked on a lot of radio and TV, and I was booked on a radio show in Kentucky with a guy who billed himself as the thinking man's redneck. Yes. And so that was an experience, and it was partially true. I'll let you try to figure out which part of that was true. But that was my idea. And I had started, the book proposal for that and everything. Well, it all got interrupted by a little something I like to call shock and awfulness. Shock and awfulness. It is 2002. That year, as I'm getting ready to put together this lighthearted book, my dad died totally. We had no idea that he was ill. He was diagnosed with colon cancer and he was gone in 2 months. My mom stopped eating and fell into a coma, and we didn't know if she'd ever come back from that. And then about 2 days before Christmas, my then husband announced to me very unceremoniously that he was leaving me and my daughter, and he had secretly invested and lost every single penny of everything we ever had. I mean, investments, 401ks, stocks, you name it. And he was moving across the country to live with an old girlfriend who had been a stripper, and she had 5 children to different men. And I'll take you out for dinner if you want, but then I'm gone.
During a year like that, though, how did that impact your writing?
It was 10 years of trying to dig. I am not, I mean, I was like overnight destitute going from up. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like we were gazillionaires or anything, but a comfortable lifestyle. You've been working,
Yeah.
scrimping, saving. I was 46 years old, whatever. I was working part-time, getting ready to sell, write out this second book. I did not have a minute to write one word, Zach. So if you've not written during the pandemic, don't sweat it. I was working part-time. I immediately I had 5 part-time jobs until I could get my full-time job back, at which time I only had 3 part-time jobs. Sold everything I could, had a kidney on eBay, no takers. I've never understood that. It was a little hurtful.
Well, it wasn't your kidney is the problem. They were selling someone. It's okay. We don't talk about that.
Well, thanks a lot, Dave.
I do want to interject here because what impresses me about Lee's writing is her ability to make me, it's your typing. Yeah, you have very few typos, but it's your ability to make me laugh and cry and be inspired all in the same paragraph. In this revised Pineapples book, My Pineapples Went to Houston, she offers this heartbreakingly funny story about the worst day of her life, which is what she's talking about here. And it concludes with her and her dog covered in cow poop and showering in a car wash. And that wasn't even the worst part of the day. That was the highlight of the day. I
didn't have any more quarters.
There you go.
They didn't take cards.
But this is why Lee and I have talked about her writing being from the inside out, as opposed to mine, which is more from the outside in.
You're more an observer of what's going on around, and then you bring it down to the personal, and that's where the funny is.
And let's just kind of feed off of that, because one of the questions we have here is about writing style with writing comedy, and you've mentioned the inward, outward, outward, inward, but how would you define your writing versus one another? Dave, it seems to me like you're more satirical than anything, and how would you say that you have similarities in your approach to writing comedy, or are you vastly different?
We are not vastly different, except where we're vastly different. And it's interesting because we talk about that quite a bit, how we approach writing. I'm a researcher. When I'm going to do for instance, I did a column not too long ago about with billionaires in space.
I love
this was a piece because Budley there's a column on the website called Ask a Terrier, and people write in and they ask Budley questions, and then Budley answers them through the sensibilities of a terrier.
But you're typing.
What's that? And I have the thumbs. That's why he keeps me.
He doesn't have thumbs. I mean,
that's exactly right. So I got a job for life.
Dog to type.
Oh, yeah. So billionaires in space became an issue again, one that I ruminated for a while and thought, how am I going to get into this piece? Okay, a dog in space, yeah. Billionaires in space, yeah. What can I do that isn't already being done by 2011 other columnists, ostensibly humorous? And I thought I better do a little research. Where's the first place I should look? So I went to the NASA website because I thought, well, what are the qualifications for an astronaut? And they have them all set up for you to look at. You have to be between 5'7" and 6'3" to be an astronaut. And Budley is 24 inches minus the tail. So he was out right there. He thought it was because they were trying to freeze out another billionaire who just happens to be a dog. But that wasn't it at all. But it allowed me, that kind of research allows me to come up with other ideas for a piece I already want to do. I knew the general topic. Where am I going to go with it that's funny, that's not predictable? And that's when I do the research. And I'll print out several pages of stories on the subject and related subjects. Read those over, take notes on the side, circle areas I think there's something funny here. I don't know what it is yet, but it's there. And then I can sit down and start writing my piece. So a lot of research goes in, and Lee has a different approach to it.
Lee does no research. Lee never lets facts research
Not to put too
historical.
fine a point on it.
No,
She doesn't.
exactly. I'm like, my God, I want people to think what I think. And if they start reading on their own and I clutter it up with all these other facts, they're going to have their own ideas. And that's not good, Dave. That's not, no, but also, because he does more newsy kinds of things, I think it's very important. But I do research in the sense, and I really think this is something that Dave and I really connect on. As far as humor, I do research to have very specific terminology, the official sounding terminology of something, and then I will create terminology modeled on that is absolutely not true. You know, just like, I mean, something stupid that just comes to my mind right now. You know, you have a biologist, okay, well, and a sociologist and a psychologist. I was writing one time about mammograms, and I referred to the doctors as breastologists. You know, of course, that's not a word. You know, or I said in the breastal area, or your chestals. When you're having your chestal, you know, that's fun, because as Dave said, you don't want to go. Humor happens where there's some reality and a lot of BS mixed together. Humor happens where things are totally juxtaposed, and humor happens, like Dave said, where the unpredictable is the, you know, the third thing, the rule of three. The most important things in life are relationship with God, community with man, and like really good jewelry. Okay. I mean, like the important things. And the other thing that I think that COVID sniffing dog, which is like one of my favorite stories ever, brings out is this, that humor, what's funny, the more specific. Oh my God, I had that turned off. I'm so sorry, but apparently it didn't turn off.
That's me, Lee.
That's you saying.
Yeah.
I was about to compliment you, Jaffe.
Wrap it up.
Jaffe. So listen to this. No, something very funny. Like he said, he looked up on the website, and the height qualifications were you had to be between five this and 6 that, or whatever. And he could have said, a less funny person would have written, oh, well, Budley was too short, or Budley didn't qualify. But he said, you know, the 6 foot, you now have the image of 6 feet 3 inches in your head. Budley's 24 inches minus the tail. That's funny. He's too short. Not so funny. Also, I went to the NASA website, and the very first thing they say, qualifications, not a terrier. You have to be not a terrier.
Can't put that up right after the piece was published. Interesting.
Exactly. So I don't know. Did we answer that question? I think maybe.
I mean, you know, I think at any point in time you may answer multiple questions, so we're doing good. That's fine. You had actually mentioned the rule of three, and just to make sure we state what that is, and use a perfect example of it. It's a staple in comedy that is, you list 2 things and then something absurd. Right. And that your example on that was spot on. I'm a big fan of the rule of three.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please, Zach.
No. Go right ahead, Dave.
So, and Lee, I've just taken over as host here to ask you the question.
Oh, so unusual.
Because I want to talk about how you approach writing your pieces. Because yes, I do the research on them, but also when I actually sit down to do the writing, I do try very consciously not to go down well-worn roads. Okay. I don't want to use that joke that I got too easily. And it goes back to what you said about let it percolate a little bit. We've talked about this. You come up with an idea, at first blush, that's a good piece. Wait a minute, wait a little while, let it percolate. Is there something better? There are pieces that I have started because I came up with a funny sentence. And I sit down and decide, okay, I can write a piece around this whole thing. It'll be funny too, but this is really what got me going. And I'll write, and I'm out about 1,000 words, and the piece is over, and I never fit that joke in. It no longer fit the piece. I save it. Right. I save it because there's a piece down that way, that's down there. When I get to that one, I'm going to use that that same line again.
Exactly.
So that's why I say, you know, your brain is always working on overtime. It happens to be for me and Lee, we're humorists. That's how we're bent. But everybody who writes or has an intention of writing is constantly thinking about, how do I turn this into a story? We're storytellers.
I was going to
Humorous
say,
ones, memoirs, we're all storytellers.
And Dave is really good at hitting you, boom, right to the first two sentences. He's got you in there. And this comes, we both cut our teeth in newsrooms, but Dave kept his teeth sharp. I am really more of a storyteller. And so I like to, you know, as the great Irma Bombeck said, you know, hook them at the front. So I want to hit you with something that gets your attention immediately, but then I tell a story and then tie together at the end that, you know, with some kind of callback. And I forget why I'm telling you this. No, but I think that what Dave said is so true. I have done that. I have had, you know, the observational kind of humor, and or you hear some funny saying or something comes to you and you're like, oh my God, I can write around. I'm going to write a whole piece just so I can say these 6 words. And as you know, Zach, and all of you know, all of your attendees that are listening, that are writers, you know, they start taking the characters or whatever you're writing starts taking on a life of its own, and it starts taking a different direction. It's almost like out of your hands, and you get to the end, and as Dave said, it doesn't fit, and it kills you to cut it. But you have to have the, you know, the strength to do that and know that you can use it again. It'll come back, it'll find its place. So you have to be a little bit brutal, a little bit ruthless, and you have to be okay with not knowing exactly where something is going, even when you really think you know where it's going.
Lee, do you find yourself, and I do this, I'll be writing dialogue. And I'll not be sure where I want this to go now. And I stop. I literally stop writing and I listen to the characters I just created. And they tell me, I mean, it's a very weird mind thing going on there. They will tell me where the piece is supposed to go next. I will hear them discussing it. So
and
you
sometimes
get into
people
that
next door say, hey, can you keep it down in there?
That's right. You and your dog. And I say, I don't have a dog. I never had a dog.
I don't like dogs.
But
no,
do you do that?
Yeah, no,
exactly.
I totally get it. I mean,
because you do that, right? So,
talking about the joke that, you know, that you create, or the joke that you have that inspires you to write a piece or a story or something like, and it doesn't make it. I mean, it's like being the person that walks up on a conversation and is trying to talk, but never quite gets there. You know, as an example. And you know, they just hope that sometime in the future they'll be able to offer something useful.
And if not, we cut them off.
If not, they're not saying anything anyway. What does it matter? So we do have a question, and actually parallels with where I was going next, from John Sokol, and it is, which authors, entertainers inspired your humor writing the most? Obviously, Irma Bombeck is in there, but are there any others?
Dave has real clear answer for this.
I do.
Yeah, you do. No, I was just going to say, I belong actually to a group, the Irma Bombeck Writers Group, and it is wonderful.
They are fabulous writers.
Irma's gone, but she has graduated from the University of Dayton, so they have all of her archives there, and they have a whole, you know, a whole program dedicated to her. And every 2 years there's a conference, and they bring in really heavy hitters, and just all the other writers are wonderfully inspirational. So there's another plug for get connected in with a group of like-minded people. So as a kid, I used to read, you know, her columns, but I always tell Dave, my mom, I was the third of 3 children, and my 2 sisters were 11 and 8 years older than I. And my mom had me later in life, and she was tired. So she sat me in front of the TV. She let me watch TV all morning, lying on the living room floor and eating chocolate chip cookies. You know, it was the 60s. What did we know? There was no sunscreen either. But I think a lot of my timing and sense of time. I never took a comedy writing class. It came from sitcoms, all those early. I Love Lucy over and over and over again. Reruns the Dick Van Dyke Show. I can repeat every word of dialogue. If I'm in the bathroom, I can tell, and I hear the show, I can tell you what Laura's going to say next. But those were some really wonderful, that was wonderful comedy college. But also the first time I had an aha moment, like Dave will tell you his, I was in my big sister's bedroom and I found their literature anthology from, I don't know, freshman year college or, something like that. And I read Our Town. I read that. And I thought, oh, this is I was like 10 years old. But then I got to the poetry section and I read Dorothy Parker and Ogden Nash. And I was like, oh my God, it was like suicide. You might as well live. Nooses give, you might as well live. And I was, this is funny, So there was that. But honestly, I really think a lot of it was comedies. But Dave has a really good aha moment.
It was
Tell the folks, Dave,
because it was so profound for me. I was in 7th grade, and I used to love to go to the library and pick up books of cartoons. The New Yorker, I couldn't understand most of the jokes in there.
Still
but
don't.
I like cartoons. I was always taken with cartoons. I mean, it's on the website. I do cartoons on there. And I had a wonderful librarian there, Ms. Wood. And she said, I see you like these cartoons. Have you ever heard of James Thurber? Never heard of James Thurber. She said, he's a wonderfully funny cartoonist, but he's also a wonderfully funny writer. And she took me over to the humor section and she pulled out a copy of Let Your Mind Alone by James Thurber. And I stood there reading it. And within about 15 or 20 minutes, I was roaring with laughter. And I was amazed by that because I had never had anyone break me up with words, just reading their words. And I was stunned by that you could do that you could write words in the right order and make milk come out of your friend's nose while you're at lunch with them. And that's a superpower. That's a gift.
That is,
it is.
That is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the comedies and everything. I remember like one of my earliest influences in comedy was actually the Carol Burnett show.
Oh, yes.
Carol Burnett and Tim Conway and Harvey Korman and all, and why am I forgetting her name?
Lyle Wagner and Vicki
Lawrence.
Vicki Lawrence.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
Vicki Lawrence.
Yeah, the one that Mama's Family.
Yeah.
But no, I lived on that stuff and really taught me the power of sketch humor and satire.
Exactly.
And I loved that.
Saturday nights, I remember I did not have a boyfriend like in 10th grade in high school. My parents went out every Saturday night. Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, and Carol Burnett. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think it really kind of goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning. I was not watching those to learn comedy, to learn comedic timing, to learn physical, verbal word, nothing like that. But because you have that kind of mind, it's seeping in. And then you call it up later in life. You're like, I wonder where that came from. So again, if you're not writing, if you're not being really active right now, you're taking things in and things are processing, and you're going to be able to call those things back up. Yeah.
Well, we've got about 10 plus minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, please do get those in. We've still got time for that.
We have the puppets, Dave.
We do have the puppet. I've got a felt board. Okay. And I do. It's really a lot of fun.
And the chainsaws.
That will be part 2.
Okay. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Leave them hungry. Leave them hungry, Zach.
One more, baby.
Yeah.
5-second delays and heavily edited. Okay. I guess whether it's writing humor out of difficult situations or just writing humor in general, do you have your own personal boundaries, or just do you believe that there are certain types of humor that are just entirely off limits?
For me, because I do mind my life and I mind the lives of everyone around me. And so I tell you, if you're in my life, I'm going to use you. I'm sorry, but I'm going to. So, that's going to happen. But no, I mean, you don't want to be so totally milk toast that there's not any real bite, but I will never write something to embarrass or humiliate or ridicule. I will turn that on myself. I will turn that on myself. Or when I do it with other people, it's very good natured. It's again, it's like saying this, how can this, my sister, how could she be so smart, but she can't figure out how to, drive to my house. She can't read directions, so, something like that to soften it. So I never go that way. And I don't like, vulgarities or things like that. I mean, I'll hit, like I said, I'll hit the chestals, and that's as edgy as I'm going to get. And that's not going to work for everybody, but that's the people that will be in my audience will jive with that. And that's okay, because that's why there's Tutti Frutti. And I
Yeah.
never write about Dave.
Never, because it's terrible things will happen.
Exactly.
Limits. I don't want to hurt anybody who's already hurting pretty terrible.
Windbags are okay.
What's that?
Puncture. Windbags will puncture.
That's
but
that,
not people. Yeah.
People who are truly suffering don't deserve that.
No.
I will take. I will filter a difficult issue through myself or through the dogs, but it's really myself. You're hearing my voice. So I'll use myself as a filter in some of these. But what I say is completely off limits. Boy, just come on. You don't need to be hateful. You just don't need, you can be sharp, you can be clever. The vulgarity, I stay away from the vulgarity for the simple reason that that's the expected route for most people to go. So it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be memorable. Whereas if I turn a phrase that doesn't have vulgarity in it, but it's a clever use of words,
exactly,
people remember that one. And that's what I want.
Dave, remember that piece last year I did about one of the COVID things that I did? I took the wrong car, for example, of what Dave's saying. I took the wrong car to pick up my dog at the kennel when we came back from vacation. By wrong car, I mean, first of all, it was a new car. My other car was 12 years old. That's my dog's car. And the second thing is he couldn't jump that high because he's 12 years old as well. It's like, oh, and I'm out there and it's pouring down rain. I don't know what I'm going to, anyhow, I finally, after much wrestling and, wailing and gnashing of teeth, I get the dog in the back of the car. But I know my husband's going to kill me because we were not to put the dog in this car. And I get home and there's dog hair everywhere, and I'm vacuuming the carpet, and it's not coming out. I had to get tweezers and sit in the back of the car. And so my line is, I am sitting here plucking out every plucking hair of this plucked up year. And I am so plucking furious. And the whole thing was plucking. And so
it was so memorable for that. That's what people remember from a piece.
Don't pluck with me 2021, but it did. It went ahead and did anyway. So yeah, like I think the dirtiest Dave's writing gets is dog poop.
Yeah, there's a lot of references to dog poop.
Exactly.
Because you can always get a laugh out of that. I mean, let's be realistic, everybody.
It's very true.
Yeah.
You have to make some concessions to the dog poop. I mean, you just do.
That's very true.
But yeah.
It's very obvious that you share a love of dogs in common, certainly in your writing and in life. But are there any like how do you go about picking the topics for your writing?
Well, I'm fortunate because I've got dogs here. So they'll do something and I can see it. Well, I can see it, I can watch it, and then I can do a story that's related to it. The interesting thing is that having written this for some time and having done so many columns that involve dialogue, I will hear my dog's inner voice when they're relating to one another. I hear what's going on in their head. please keep that here. Don't let anybody know because they're going to
This
take
is
me
live
away.
streaming day.
But it's
Don't worry,
boy.
don't worry, Dave. It's only live streaming and going on our
Yeah,
YouTube channel.
yeah,
It's fine.
Great.
You're good. We
Right. Well,
won't
who
tell
watches
anyone.
that YouTube?
What are 10 million people?
We're
Nah,
like that.
it's just
We're
a
like
fad.
that.
That YouTube's
No.
a fad.
Like
We're
the
like
radio.
we're like that offshoot channel that was on UHF back in the day. Don't worry about it.
53.
The one where it was all fuzzy and sideways.
Hey,
and you
I
could-
was on that
saw
channel,
one.
you
I
people.
saw one.
I was on that channel.
Well, I mean, obviously we didn't see it.
Right. Or we would have had a very different meeting here and certainly another topic.
But you do hear I think, yeah, the dogs do something, and I'm living, and since mine is a lot based on idiotic things I do, I'm never at a loss for idiotic things that I do, and relating it somehow or other to, something that's something that's trending,
Yeah. And I have a set of characters who I have introduced over the years to the dog park. There are
Oh,
other
yeah.
dogs, and I can use them as foils for an issue that's in the news. I
Mhm.
have, and I can use how they observe the world, or at least how we think they would observe the world. I have one who's a regular at the dog park. He's a Bernese mountain dog.
Mountain dog, yeah.
But he only talks about himself in metaphors about mountains, even though he's never seen a mountain. He's very proud of having mountain in his name. And then there's another character, Roxy the boxer. Poor
Moment
Roxy.
of silence. Bow your heads, please.
Poor Roxy. We never actually meet Roxy. That's because Roxy was taken away from the dog park in a windowless police van after an incident that involved school children and a bus driver and firefighters and police and the U.S. Postal Service and off-duty military personnel. You never find out what happened. The dogs just refer to him. And then they always end it by saying, but he was taken away, and we understand that he's on a nice farm somewhere, and he runs and runs all day.
Yeah.
So he's a character that I can often bring in, and that's pretty dark. Roxy's a pretty dark character, but he allows me to explore certain dark topics through him, through using him as my foil. So
Yeah.
It's a way to deal with those kinds of issues.
Exactly. It's using humor. Exactly. Finding a way to do that. Yeah, Roxy. But another thing, David, and now Budley was picked up on the street, and the dog I have now, he was living on the streets of, he was picked up, I think, somewhere in Cobb County. I live in Gwinnett, but he was picked up. Yeah, they'd both been living on the streets, and as Dave and I always say, they've seen things.
Mysterious things. What's that from the movie European Things?
Exactly.
From Soap Dish, right?
Yeah. So that van, straight to the farm. Yeah, that's where the van went. Straight to that farm.
Dave, you don't have to worry about your secret. I myself have a tendency to dialogue for animals, and it's fun. It's a joy. I have conversations with my cat. I'm not sure if that's good or bad for her, but it entertains me. She responds, so I figure she must have some thought.
Something in it for
she
her.
has opinions. I know that. But no, I do appreciate that.
Our pets are the unsung heroes of this pandemic the last couple of years, because
that is very true.
They have given us so much.
Pets and carbohydrates.
And they've given us the thing. They've given us the thing that I know I speak for my cat on this one for sure, that they may not have wanted to give us, which is the time, seeing us all the
Nicely
time.
put. Nicely
great,
put.
Great for most dogs, I think, but
great,
this particular one,
she
say if my legs are there, that's fine, but otherwise the rest of me can go.
Exactly.
But yeah, okay. So if anybody has any other questions, last chance to do so. We're running out of time here, but before we go anywhere, first and foremost, thank you.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having us. It's been
fantastic to have you guys here and playing off of one another like a great tag team comedy couple on stage. I really have enjoyed it. But
as long as Lee is around and I am around, vaudeville will never die.
Despite the fact that she gets upset when you show up on screen.
I noticed that too. Yeah, we have to
yeah.
talk about that.
Nothing if not an act. Honey, I was married for 22 years to the other husband. So if you want to talk about someone who's good at faking it,
Okay.
that's all I'm going to say. Told you I
Yeah.
won't go past that line.
Well, I don't want us to get away here without you having a chance to promote your work. So where do we find these awesome things aside from the assortment of links that have been dropped in there by Jessica?
And Jessica,
please,
thank you so much for that. You can find our books on Amazon. You can find them in they're in hardcover and they're in ebooks. Smashwords, I know carries mine also. Lee, I know you're through Amazon. All your books can be found.
Just go to my website, leegaitan.com, or go to Amazon and just, Google my name. My pineapples went to Houston, Life, Wines, and Laughter. And any of those will bring them up. And
if you do go to our sites, we have both put in links to a bundle of our two most recent books at quite a discount, because we are trying to appeal to book clubs and writing groups such as this. And if you go through there, you'll be able to get both books at a considerable discount. Yes. But you can find them on and go to your local bookstore and demand it. And if they don't have it, don't furious with them.
And stomp your feet.
And throw things and knock over displays, because that's all they understand.
Yeah, and they respond to that.
Very well.
As a former bookstore owner and someone who worked for bookstores, I will tell you that you will be remembered.
Yeah. That's important.
Which he means it's effective. I think that's what he's trying to say.
And I mean both the customer and the books they wanted. So,
it's a kind of immortality, isn't it?
Exactly. It's like nothing good like bad press. Well, thank you again for your time and for your thoughts on this. I'm sure at some point in time we'll have more conversations on these things. It was a joy to have you here. And for the rest of you, please do follow these two. I assume you are on social media.
Yes.
And visit their websites, read everything that they put out, and go to bookstores. Do not upset the booksellers.
Please, I have a second book coming out sometime in 2022.
Be nice.
Be nice, please. This one is this one is about this is Budley, Ask a Terrier. It's the collected works of a professional dog. Okay, a professionally licensed dog.
Excellent. We look forward to it. Thank you then to you both, and thank you to everybody who was here.
Thank you.
As a reminder, will be edited and put on our YouTube channel just in case you want to revisit all this over again. So thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.